VCT Americas Super Week has concluded and we are now heading into the final stretch of Stage 1, and there has been some major change with teams that are doing well and teams that are doing poorly. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we are updating my power rankings yet again after Super Week. I did one of these before Super Week, and now there has been a lot of movement. Many teams doing better than expected, many teams doing worse than expected, so we're here to rank all of them. So for anybody that hasn't watched my power rankings before, I do my power rankings based off of who I think is doing good right now, not necessarily how I see each of these teams on paper. This is all based off of recent results, and since we had Super Week where each team played twice, we now know where a lot of these teams stand. We will be going from bottom to top, so starting with not wasting anyone's time with these two teams, our bottom two are Furia, who are not changing at all from where they've been most of the season, and then MIBR, who are moving down one. These two Brazilian teams are not looking good at all. They haven't won a match so far. There's a very good chance neither of these teams win a single match, which for Furia, definitely disappointing. For MIBR, I would argue even more disappointing because they did show some pretty good stuff at kickoff, but they have since collapsed. And for number 9, a team that I really did not expect them to be here at any point during the season, really, our biggest mover in terms of going down the rankings, we have Loud at number 9. I really didn't want to do this. I really didn't want to put Loud at number 9. I did not want to put them this low, but with them not winning a match and losing against two teams in C9 and Crew that they should be able to beat, this team just doesn't look like they have much of anything right now. They look lost out there. They don't look as motivated. They just look like a completely different team than what we've seen from them in the past. I think this is completely unacceptable for a team that had World Championship aspirations last year and was hoping for the same this year. So I really hope Loud can figure it out. I'm not a huge fan of the team. I don't dislike them or anything. It's just they're not my team. But I am rooting for them to turn this around. They have a big match on Saturday coming up against Sentinels. And while Sentinels also dropped on this rankings, they are still a very good team. So it's going to be tough out, but I really hope Loud figures something out. Moving on to number 8, we have another team with no movement, the only other team with no movement aside from Furia, and that is G2. So G2, much like Loud, I didn't really want to put them this low, and I definitely don't think that they're a bottom 4 team in the Americas, but right now, there's just not a lot there to justify them moving above teams that are above them. They did split their Super Week. They won against Furia, so that doesn't move them up because they're a really bad team. And then they lost against Leviathan, who have moved up quite a bit since last week. So I decided not to punish G2 for that loss, but also not reward them for their win. So they're in the same spot, and we'll see where they go. Playoff seems pretty out of reach at this point, but we'll see. Moving on to another team that split their weekend 1-1, but did have a very impressive win that brought them quite up, and that is Evil Geniuses move up to number 7, up from number 10, sorry. EG started their weekend losing against Crew, a team on an incredible hot streak right now, and then they ended their weekend with beating Sentinels. And maybe it's just one of those things with Sentinels always beating 100 Thieves, but this time it's Potter always beating Kaplan. She did tweet that out before the weekend even started, which I found hilarious because their next match wasn't even Sentinels. But maybe that's just a thing that happens. Maybe Potter just knows how to counter-strat Kaplan's teams and Sentinels as well. So good win from EG there. That does drop Sentinels down quite a bit. And EG, I really don't know what to think of this team. They do have a chance to make playoffs. They are in the best position out of the bottom 4 of their group. But if Loud win the next match against Sentinels, then they are right back in it. And EG only have one more match left. It is against Energy, so that'll be a very interesting matchup. Energy, also another team that dropped. So we'll see where it goes. But I still don't see this team doing a lot, but people said that about them last year. Maybe they do the same exact thing. So now we get into a team that had one of the biggest drops this week, dropping down 4 spots. We have Sentinels at number 6. So I had Sentinels at number 2 last week. I thought that that was a decent place to put them because they hadn't totally slipped yet. They did lose against Leviathan, but they did beat 100 Thieves, so split the difference. They stay in the top 2 spots, but not at number 1. And then at Super Week, they get an easy win over MIBR, but then they lose to Evil Geniuses. I even debated putting EG ahead of Sentinels for this one, but I do think Sentinels are the better team. It's just they just won that match. Sentinels really could have had it. It genuinely was a pretty sloppy win for Evil Geniuses, if we're being honest. But even so, with Sentinels losing that game, a game they absolutely had to win for their own playoff hopes, they now have a decent chance to miss playoffs, and that would just be a huge disappointment from where they were at. So Sentinels, unfortunately, they dropped down 4. Pretty big movement for them, but unfortunately, it's where I see them right now. I do think they're better than this. I still think they make Shanghai, but they have to make playoffs first. Moving on to number 5, another team that disappointed greatly. That is Energy, down 4 spots. I had them at number 1 last week. That did not age well. So the reasoning behind Energy dropping down 4 spots. Now, I've talked about other teams losing to Leviathan and me not punishing them for that. And Energy did split their week. They did beat MIBR, but again, I'm not going to give a team praise for that. And while losing against Leviathan isn't a huge deal in the grand scheme of things, they got embarrassed. Absolutely embarrassed by Leviathan. It was one of the worst matches of Valorant I think I've ever seen. It was just downright awful. Leviathan were in control the entire time. Energy were not playing sync. They were not playing well, and that just drops them down quite a bit. They had a good bounce back match against MIBR, so I do think that if they just iron out some kinks, if they play a little bit tighter and a little less loose and just, really think about your strats in a better way, because man, that Lev game, oh god. But I think that this team can recover. I did think that they were playing well, even though they didn't beat any teams that were super good before that Leviathan match. So I felt comfortable having them at number 1. Some comments disagreed, and those comments were validated. And I do have some concerns about this team. I still think they're very talented, but they haven't beat a team that's really good yet this year. Even dating back to kickoff, the best team they beat was C9, and at the time that wasn't a huge accomplishment. So I am worried about this team. I still believe. I will continue to believe until I am totally proven that I shouldn't. So moving on to a top 4 that looks quite interesting if you look at the teams left. So starting off with the top 4, we have Crew and number 4, the highest they have been this season. Crew look fantastic right now. They've beaten everybody. They're 4-0. They will be in playoffs. And now it's a matter of, can they push for that top seed? If they get that top seed, they only need 1 win in playoffs to make it to Shanghai. And that would be a huge accomplishment and a huge bounce back year from what was a very disappointing and rough 2023 aside from LCQ. Heat has given this team an extra boost and they just look fantastic with him. Klaus is looking fantastic. His IGLing is clearly working out. Kesnet, I really hope this guy starts to get the credit that he deserves. This man is an absolute machine. And just everybody in their team, they're playing as a unit. They're playing structured. They're out dueling everybody. They're just a team of dudes that can kill anybody and they're looking fantastic. I'm very curious to see how they match up against other really top tier teams. And they did beat Loud, huge accomplishment. They sweep their whole weekend. So I am very curious to see what happens when they face Energy, when they face Sentinels, when they face Leviathan. So we'll see truly where the ceiling is for this team when we see that happen. But for now, I can't put them in the top 3, but I think number 4 is a solid spot for them. Good job, Crew. Super proud of you. So moving on to the top 3, I'm putting C9 and number 3. So C9 maybe deserves to be a bit higher than number 3. They do move up 1 from where they were last week. Crew also moved up 3 spots. I forgot to mention that earlier. C9 started their weekend beating Loud 2-1, so very solid, very good upset win there. But then we get to Monday and they lost 2-0 against 100 Thieves. So one thing that I've seen from C9 is that Loud game, that was very impressive, and maybe that was less of the kind of chaotic, muddy mess that this team usually plays in, but it was still a typical kind of win that they've been able to get this year so far. They lose that first map, but then they grind out the rest of the match and just wear down the other team until they can get the win. And it's a kind of winning that is impressive, but I don't know if it's sustainable. I think eventually teams start to figure out that kind of play and realize what C9 is doing, and that kind of seems like that's what happened at the 100 Thieves match. 100 Thieves just outplayed them. So I do think that C9 is a good team, but there are things that I see with their play that are things that make me feel like, yeah, this team is on a hot streak, or at least was on a hot streak, but I don't know how long this is going to last. So I feel like number 3, they do move up. I think that's a good spot for them. But if you have them at a number 2, then I don't blame you. So moving on to number 2, moving up 4 spots is 100 Thieves is number 2 this week. So 100 Thieves only played 1 match during Super Week, and that was, as I mentioned, against C9. But what I will say about that is that this team, ever since that Sentinels loss, they haven't dropped a map. They look super structured, they look super dominant, they look really good. A lot of players on that team are looking really good right now. Cryocells looks like the form that he was on at Xset, maybe not as good, but he is underratedly playing really good Valorant right now. Bustio has brought the vibes to this team in a very good way. EU, underratedly as well, is playing quite good. And Asuna, after a rough start to the stage, finally looks like he's hitting a stride. So I'm very impressed with what I've seen. It is a smaller sample size, so maybe I do have them a bit high, but from what I've seen from this team, I think this is sustainable, and they just seem to just keep getting better after each match, and that's very important. Their next match is against Crew. Team on hot streak, that's going to be a tough one. And then they end the stage against Energy. So they might be able to win at least one of those. So that will definitely be a big accomplishment if they're able to do it. So we'll see how far this team can go, but I am starting to believe. Please don't prove me wrong. Which means that at number 1, a team moving up 4 spots from where they were last week, from number 5, we have Leviathan at number 1. They've played extremely well. They've beaten some really good teams in Sentinels and Energy, grinding out that overtime win against Sentinels, then absolutely stomping Energy. They did lose a map against G2, but it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. They did pretty much dominate them on that first map, and then they were able to close it out on the third. So this team is looking like the team that we've expected them to be. They've looked fantastic. Aspas is destroying everyone right now. Aspas genuinely might be the best player in the world. I know there's a lot of debate about who. I know Zekin is still in the conversation despite not being as good at this stage than he was earlier, but Aspas has consistently showed that he can frag out against anybody at any time, and the rest of the team is looking really good as well. Kane is on a really good hot streak right now. Mazzino's starting to improve his play, Kama is starting to improve his play, and Tex is looking much better. So we'll see what the ceiling is for this team. We'll see how playoff goes. They still could collapse. It is a well, it's a possibility for every team, so it's not really fair to me to just say that about them. But even so, if this team can get to Shanghai, they're probably going to walk into that tournament as one of the contenders. So I'm very impressed with what I've seen from Leviathan as of late. Definitely a bounce back from a rough first match to start the split. So they are number 1 on my VCT Americas power rankings post Super Week. So this is my list. These are my rankings. Let me know your guys' rankings in the comment section down below. Please let me know what you think of my rankings. I'm sure there'll be plenty of disagreement in the comments, but hey, that's what we're here for. We're here to discuss. Please click like if you enjoyed the video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.